Today we have with us Khadija Miller from Norfolk State, our sister HBCU, who is here to celebrate the opportunities and exciting benefits, possibilities of interdisciplinary core. She has a handout which I will be distributing momentarily, along with the evaluation form if you don't already have one. Any questions for me before we get started? All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here in your lovely city. I haven't been here in 20 years, so I felt old, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then if we could go around, and then you could just tell me what you teach, and also if you know a little bit about, or what you know in terms of interdisciplinary courses or interdisciplinary studies. So as Robin said, I'm from Norfolk State University, and I chair the Department of History and Interdisciplinary Studies. And so there are many different models in terms of interdisciplinary curriculums and interdisciplinary programs, and at Norfolk State we hold two of them. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, just really quickly, teachers do not get a degree in education, they get a degree in a discipline, or they can get a degree in interdisciplinary studies. And so we have a portion of our curriculum that is for teachers, and then we have a portion of our curriculum that allows students to combine 2 or 3 subject areas into a meaningful degree. So my own background, just very briefly, I come from studies. My PhD is in African American Studies, and then I also have a graduate certificate degree in Women's Studies, and my undergraduate is in journalism, print journalism. So I made a roundabout way to where I am today. But so that's just a little bit of background. I'm also on the board for the Association for Interdisciplinary Studies, which is the oldest professional organization for integrative or interdisciplinary studies as well. And I know that my colleague Tanya Augsburg was here a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if any of you were at her presentation on assessment as well. But I'm not going to repeat what she did, but I do have that information if anyone's interested. So if you could just go around and kind of tell me who you are and what you teach, and just really quick what you know about. If you do something interdisciplinary, or if it's new to you, that would also help me as well. Get started.
I am Krista Mincy. I am one of the faculty members in the Department for Public Health Sciences. What do I teach? I teach intro, research, epidemiology, and I'm over internships. And so my understanding, mainly from my field, is it's a combining of different areas and thoughts and processes and all that to see how to address an issue, address a concern, address a problem.
Mm-hmm. I'm Nancy Hampton. I'm actually a librarian. I'm interested in touching on different disciplines as a support person for the disciplines and their interdisciplinary courses.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm also a librarian, one of the faculty members in the Department of Special Projects in the library. So we do a lot of work with liaisons departments, and so we cross over to each department to make sure that we have the coursework and support materials and resources that they need.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Oliver Hennessy. I'm in the English department. I teach British literature, specialize in Shakespeare. Already teach an interdisciplinary course I've developed with colleagues from philosophy and theology called the Ideal Society.
Hi, I'm Rachel Haley. I teach in the Division of Education and Counseling. I teach both undergraduate and graduate students. I teach curriculum classes, and I am the person who introduces interdisciplinary teaching and methods to our students.
Hi, I'm Liz Edgecombe, and I'm in Communication Studies. I teach a little bit of everything this semester: science communication and health comm. And by the nature of our field, we're pretty interdisciplinary, so use a lot of sociology and other theories in my work.
Hi, I'm Charlene Senegal DeQueer, and I am in the history department. I teach African American history, and I'm really just here to learn, trying to figure out how to incorporate interdisciplinary areas into what I teach, and hopefully I can get to my destiny.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Cohen. I'm in the psychology department. My degree is in neuroscience, so my field is inherently interdisciplinary. So I teach intro psych, I teach our research course, statistics, but also drugs and behavior, disorders of the brain. I'll be teaching a cognitive neuroscience course in the near-term future as well. So my background is in biology, really. So a lot of, when I come at my course, I come at it from a biological perspective. It's integrating biology with, psychology and behavior, as well as aspects of chemistry.
Hi, I'm Richard Peters. I am in business. I presently teach a course of social responsibility and sustainability that is relatively interdisciplinary. I'm also going to be helping out on one of the committees that are looking at some of these ex-core classes, so I'm very interested in not only increasing my involvement personally in interdisciplinary, but also helping colleagues as much as possible develop and work with their courses.
I'm Amanda Helm, teaching marketing in the Division of Business. My area is consumer behavior, which defines itself as an interdisciplinary field. But I haven't had much training explicitly in how to be interdisciplinary, so this is kind of new and exciting for me. And I was a member of the core curriculum, still a member of the core curriculum working group that proposed the new core.
And Jerry Farmer, I'm in the Department of Theology, and the course that I've been focusing on and I'm going to continue to enhance and develop is a dialogue between theology and environmental science to really address environmental degradation.
Hi, I'm Jay Todd. Excuse me, I'm in the English department. Teach an interdisciplinary course on comics and the graphic novel, and then I'm also interested in some other ones as well. And then I'm also on this core curriculum working group.
Hi, Michael Hullman from Theology. The courses I teach are by nature interdisciplinary, so I'm just here to learn more.
I'm Mike Adams. In chemistry, I teach freshman level and senior level chemistry courses, and for the past several years, I've also taught in our freshman seminar sequence, and so I have a one-credit course in environmental justice, which is interdisciplinary, but I don't know that I know what I'm doing. So anything I can learn would be great. And I'm also a member of the core curriculum group that has been working on the core.
Hi, I'm Thomas Hakaba. I am a professor in the biology department. Laryngitis, I apologize. I'm working with a colleague in the philosophy department to generate a bioethics course as part of the new bioethics minor, and we're teaching it for the first time next fall. So I'm sort of interested in how to get to go from having it put together on paper to actually launching the course.
Okay.
Hi, Muhammad Awad. I'm in biology. I teach biology and microbiology. I am developing a course in animation in biology, and I'm like Mike Adams. I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Good evening. I'm Sister Mary Ann Stackhouse from theology, also like Michael, teaching biblical studies, which is of itself interdisciplinary. But I'm also interested in, been talking with Art to do a course, Art in the Search for God, as a study abroad option in Italy.
All right, well, one disclaimer. I don't know it all, so I'm just going to share some best practices and then also hopefully provide you with some tools so that you can design and create courses that best fit a couple of objectives. The objectives of your curriculum, but also specifically, I think what makes interdisciplinarity so beneficial is that it can be tailored for your various student populations. And so we'll talk about that as well. We're not necessarily talking to the handout, but I want to kind of, leave you with something that you could use to build from. So a lot of this I know that has already been done, coming from and I know that all HBCUs are different. NSU is a public state. But one thing I think that is consistent is that we know that the curriculum really is the work of the faculty. And so, of course, the curriculum has to meet the standards that are established through your accrediting body and those other type of legalities. But the curriculum also is an opportunity for the university to identify itself. And so with the mix of theology and business and communications and the sciences and history, marketing, and the public health sciences, there's a way for all of that to come together to make sense to meet whatever the goal is. And I know that the mission of Xavier speaks to preparing students that can be, civically engaged and aware to serve in our global society. And so therefore trying to make sense of how those different areas, public health science, communications, theology, business, how do they make sense together? And I know that that's a challenge that many of us face in higher ed. So the good thing about curriculum, though, is that it can always change. And so, what is developed today, you go through the process, you look at it, and then you can make adjustments to meet whatever those growing needs are. And we know that given just, take the 20 years, when I was here 20 years ago, going down Bourbon Street, people didn't have cell phones in hand. All they had were drinks. But there was a balancing act, I noticed last night, where, it was a cell phone. And so, you move forward, how technology has really impacted. Not the best example, and of course you won't lose that in the classroom, but you get the gist of it. So interdisciplinary courses really provide us with all of these great attributes to do. So one is, and I think that it's a given, it just allows you to combine different disciplines within a particular context in a singular course that allows a broader perspective. Also, though, interdisciplinary studies really provide an opportunity to merge theory with practice. And so when we look at the types of courses that they have, it gives you an option to take something very theoretical like neuroscience, which I don't know a lot about, but how you can break that down in an everyday opportunity for students to really actualize how it is when it's at place. The other aspects, they allow for a broader perspective, and it allows faculty personally to kind of stretch what you know. We own, our disciplinary knowledge. We're experts. We have the degrees, the debt, everything to show for it. So, we know what we're talking about. But when you're able to look at something that you're so familiar with through the lens of another, engage in kind of a cross-disciplinary exercise, it just gives you a new perspective, and oftentimes it's challenging in a positive way for the faculty member. And then, of course, there's just data that interdisciplinary courses for students, although they may not realize it initially, it's very beneficial for them because it broadens how they look at, a really simple topic like civic engagement. Think, oh, okay, you vote, you do something for community, you write a letter to the editor, but it gives them an opportunity to really expand and see all that's in place. And then, of course, there's benefits for the instructors. I want to focus on three particular aspects as well. And one is you can really tailor your interdisciplinary studies courses to speak to the student population. So I don't know, do you have a like for, I'll just share, we have a large non-traditional student population at NSU. And so oftentimes there's a challenge in the class, and you have maybe a traditional age, traditional residential student along with a commuting working parent, and then we have a retired military person, all in the same class. And so an interdisciplinary course also sets up a culture among the students to share those experiences along with the theories and information that you're using, which allows for another level of interdisciplinarity. So it's not just integrating that disciplinary knowledge, but also integrating that experiential knowledge as well. And that helps students develop a greater perspective, and it broadens their lens as well. So I think I've heard a couple people say that they are team teaching. That's one type of interdisciplinary course. And I will talk about that a little bit. But a core, there's three types. So the core is one that really just focuses on what is interdisciplinarity. And I believe that, and I am horrible with names, so I apologize, but I do know that the young lady right here in public health sciences said that she's familiar that interdisciplinarity is about integrating disciplinary knowledge. So that's always a basic definition that I say. There's key aspects. One, you have to have integration. Oftentimes it's confused with multidisciplinary, where we have just multiple perspectives on one topic, but the integration, there really is no integration to see how her educational background with his neuroscience and her public health, how they come together to broaden the lens. So integration is a key aspect. Another key aspect of interdisciplinarity is that it usually addresses some issue that is still unresolved. And we know we have a lot of those issues in our society. And so it helps to, one, to take a step back and to look at this through the lens of these other perspectives, and to see, one, not just what's missing from this singular disciplinary review on the topic, but also to see how I can pull from those various areas to maybe broaden their perspective and to, at the very least, broaden the discussion, and hopefully to try to solve some of those complex issues. And so there you might focus on some interdisciplinary theories, which are perspective taking, common ground theory, where you focus on looking at, I think someone was doing environmental science and theology. And so instead of looking at, what's so different, but what are the common grounds, right? So let's just say how we all got here. That's the common ground. So now you have one perspective, you have another perspective. What are some more commonalities in there? And then also to look at is not just what your perspective is, but what role does it play in expanding our understanding? And that's a major theory that students tend to grasp towards, because if you can find a common ground, then you can start to have some types of discussions. So a core interdisciplinary course, that's one type. Another type is problem-based, which is also very popular. And so you choose a problem, homelessness, poverty, politics, whatever, and you attempt to review that problem from multiple perspectives. And you seek solutions coming from those different perspectives. So how do psychologists look at the issue of homelessness? How do educators look at it? What is the literature on the topic? What are the economic and business factors related to homelessness? It's not just about being displaced, but there may be some political issues. There may be some cultural and societal issues. Are there differences in how homelessness affects men and women? And so therefore we start to look at the problem through a greater lens and then bring those perspectives together. And then, which I think is what it sounds like several persons here are doing, are thematic interdisciplinary studies courses where you have a theme, you explore and study it, and you give the perspectives from different disciplines. I would say this one is the most tricky to not be interdisciplinary. And this sometimes is found in cases where a course is team taught and the team teaching structure can change. And so you might have let's say three teachers, and one teaches, module 1, one module 2, one module 3. And so it becomes where students get 3 different perspectives without really blending those perspectives together to make sense. And so it's just that sometimes a tricky aspect. Let me say this, any questions or comments, just interrupt me because this should be more of a discussion, but I just wanted to kind of get some of the basics out there. So once you have those 3 types, then there are tools, and I'm kind of throwing this in this order because sometimes if you think backwards, like what's the end goal? So, I have this course, but what do I want the students to get out of it? And then think, how can we do that? And so these are some ways, and they link themselves to some core principles of interdisciplinarity, which is one is reflection. You want the students to reflect on whatever the information is, and there are different ways to do that. So of course there's journaling, and I always encourage directed journaling where they have guide questions. And then there's various mapping exercises. One exercise that tends to work well regardless of the course is a autobiographical map. And so instead of a typical, I was born here and, I do this and this is what I want to major and this is what I want to do, you have the students thinking of whatever the major disciplines that are going to be integrated in that course and to apply that to themselves. So let's say if it's a course, let's just take that theology and environmental science, then in that student's autobiographical map, and this helps in the beginning to kind of assess where your class is, to talk about their maybe religious beliefs and perspectives, how do they see the relationship between science and religion, and then they would map that through telling a story about themselves. And with the map, it's just not a verbal or written document, but they provide visuals to support that as well. And students sometimes fight that, but at the end, it's beneficial. Another way to map is to give students a concept. And so what they have to do is to provide a visual explanation of that concept. And you can give them some, guide. So they may have to include the definition, they may have to give examples, and that's another way for students to kind of track how they're integrating the course materials. Another tool to consider when creating your interdisciplinary course is different ways of analysis. And so they can look for articles. One way that makes interdisciplinarity effective is to take the textbook and juxtapose that with where our students love to get their information, the internet. And to look, let's say, at sites like CNN or not Wikipedia, but popular, let's say, journalistic sites on how they address the topic compared to what the textbooks say. Because we find that with interdisciplinary studies that oftentimes students, one, they're struggling to tackle the different disciplinary knowledge, and so if you can provide them with examples, real-world examples of how this same these same disciplines are attempting to address something theoretically, how in the real world they do it. And so oftentimes, if you look at, let's just say that very horrific situation of the high school student who was kidnapped by her teacher. And so to use that as an example of, let's say, communication skills, and also to look at, to evaluate, the educational system. So there, you would have to integrate multiple issues, right? So what some of the issues with that, if you're looking at this situation, what disciplinary knowledge would you need to integrate? Are people, I'm assuming you're familiar with this. It's not a nice example, but you're familiar with this? Okay. So this high school student, he's her mentor or something, and then he kidnaps her, and they're on this month-long. So what issues are involved? Issues of communication. There would also be security and, issues of the educational system and structure, checks and balances in terms of, roles of power, economics. So all of that, you would pull something from contemporary, happenings, and then how you would apply that to whatever you're discussing in the course. And then, of course, cultural, social, and historical contextual analysis. So was anybody here from sociology? No. So is anyone familiar with the social location theory? Okay, so very, very quickly. So social location is basically this theory that we assess other people and ourselves by socially locating them. So when I first walked in the room, or when you first walked in the room and you saw me, there was, on some conscious or subconscious level, a quick social location of me, okay? And so it's based initially on very superficial, most times physical attributes, okay? She's female, she's black, she's whatever age you think I am. Some may hear a certain accent, so they might say, oh, okay, she's from, let's say, the north versus the south. And then you might do a quick assessment to see, oh, does she have other social identifiers? Does she have on a wedding ring? And just other things of that sort. And we do that because then it helps us to, when we go, oh, hi, how are you? Can I shake your hand? Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. And then other ways to socially locate you. What do you do? Where do you live? We know if a person lives in the ninth ward versus living in, what was that suburb with the mansions we went by? Some other place. She's doing a play. That gives you an idea of where a person is. So social location is something that we do. And it could be used to stereotype, but it's really used as a social tool so that we know how to communicate with other people. And students find when they recognize this, one, to socially locate themselves. Your social location continues to change. So when I first came here, I was living in Philadelphia 20 years ago. So I would say, oh, I'm a Philadelphian. And now I see me, I say, oh, I'm from Virginia. I'm not from Virginia. I live in Virginia. But so in your educational level changes, your relationship status, your economic status, all these things change, but social location has an impact on how we view the world. So if we have students who have never left Louisiana, how they see someone like me from Brooklyn, New York, is going to be very different, let's say, than how they see a fellow teacher who is also from Louisiana. And so that's going to shape how they address these topics that you're trying to bring to them from multiple disciplinary perspectives. Because in their mind, they're saying, well, wait a second, in my world, this is very real. We know perceptions are very real. This is how I see this. And so, having these cultural, social, historical, contextual analysis allows students to, in small steps, which are really large steps, to kind of break out of their normal lens of perspective to see things from others. And so when you do a social location exercise for them first to socially locate themselves, it helps them to better recognize that when someone else talks, wait, let me think about, they're coming from this perspective. And then they can say, oh, well, I never thought of it that way, and not I'm right and you're wrong, but that's your perspective. Thank you for sharing that. And it's not to change a person's mind, but just to provide space for that type of discussion. In looking at some of the data that was shared, as a lot of work has been done, but then there's a lot of work that's open. And so I think that just from my very quick review, that really whatever you want to do, you can do, which is like excellent. And so if it's part of the core, and then I believe that I saw you have 6 main core goals, then what will work best to do that? And so it's really up to you, but I would encourage to think about not just those areas that we ourselves as faculty, and I know that students have checked me multiple times and said, oh, well, Dr. Miller, that's how you see it, but that's not the world that we're in. And so it made me take pause and say, okay, well, what are some of these, major issues that you think need to be addressed? Something as an ongoing debate I'm having with 2 particular students who they want me to justify or to defend why they should really go to school. She says, because anything I want to know, I can Google it. If I want to know the parts of the brain, I can watch a YouTube video. If I want to learn about, how chemistry experiments, I can, YouTube it. I could go to Khan Academy. Why do I need? And she's explained to me how she doesn't want to take these prerequisite courses. She wants to jump right into her major courses. And so trying to, that's a whole nother, this information overload is dangerous because it's not contextualized. And so as we develop courses, to really explain to students why the core is so important. And that is something that I think you're just, primely fit to do that in very creative and effective ways through the establishment of the interdisciplinary courses. And then, of course, you can always make adjustments. That's the good thing. You do a pilot, you assess, and then you either build on it or you scrap it and you do something else as well. And so we talked about the different types. In addition, you have team taught, single instructor, and theory. The team taught model takes an additional amount of work. And so you would just need to weigh in terms of investment and what works best for you, and then the stipulations with lovely administration. But the team taught, and then there could be some other, I know when we consider to do team taught, I don't know, what's your teaching load here? Is it the same? 4-4. Okay, so we're 4-4 too. Sometimes 4-5, 5-5, depending on what's going on. And so one way is to split it where you do team taught, fall, and then team taught spring, and then that kind of balances out that you still have a full load, or to do 2 team taught and 2 fully, 1 semester, and then 4. So there are different models to make it work, but to think about that. I would just say in terms of outside of those kind of logistical issues with team taught is to consider the time that if you're both able to come to every class. because there needs to be a sense of an integration among the faculty and not just the information. And that sometimes becomes a challenge. Because I know sometimes, honestly, some faculty are like, oh yeah, team taught, so look, I only have to come to the classroom for, 8 weeks, and then you come for 8 weeks, and then, but really to show the integration at work, then that's an aspect. With a single instructor course, let me just say this, all of them require work. So just, depends on what type of work you want to do. The single instructor course, of course, you come from your own perspective of how you've been trained, but then you engage in a lot of pre-research to provide those other disciplinary perspectives there, but you can also use the students as well to do that research and to bring those perspectives in as well. And then there are the theory plus practice courses where you spend, let's say, the first half talking about those different disciplinary perspectives, and then the second half you do them through an externship, internship, service learning, community service, observations as a way for them to bridge the two together. And they often end with some type of portfolio or presentation that works as well. Okay, so if nothing else, I just want everyone to know that you really are the architect, the engineer, the designer, and to be flexible enough. There are core traits of being an interdisciplinarian, and among those is flexibility and creativity, and to have courage, to recognize strengths and weaknesses, and then to find a way to tackle that. And I have found that with students, when you're engaging in the process with them in the classroom, it creates a different type of connection when they're able to see your own weaknesses, because when you engage in interdisciplinarity, you admit that you don't know everything. And so therefore, I am coming to you from my perspective, and I know that there are other knowledge bases that are needed in order to enrich that. And so interdisciplinary courses really lend themselves not just to team building and team formation, but they also lend themselves to developing strengths independently as an independent thinker and even as a leader. A reliance on other people and yourself, and then, of course, to share, reflect, defend. You need to be able to defend because interdisciplinarians are not jacks of all trade. That's a misnomer. You're not a generalist, but instead you recognize that in order for something to be addressed, multiple perspectives are needed, and so then you go to those who hold that information. There are some sample syllabi on the AIS website that lend themselves to some of the examples that were there. They don't have like an introduction to interdisciplinary studies course there, but they have some that lend themselves to literature, some that lend themselves to art, religion, and so they may serve as some sample syllabi to help you in the creation process. And again, just to be flexible, and if it doesn't work, you just chuck it and try something else. I think what's most important that you're able to find the various paths to reach the curricular goals that you have, for the students at Xavier. And that's the good thing, that there are no set, like this set template, and this is what I think what's critical is that you have those major components of integration, and there's a certain level of flexibility and openness to the various perspectives. And I will also say that in the real world we don't do things disciplinary. So when you have an issue like me, probably sharing too much, like we were like, oh wow, taxes are due. We have to file an extension because you get busy, and so then you look and see, well, what are the laws, what are the options? You talk to your tax accountant and your lawyer, and you look at your bank account. You put all that together before making a decision. And so doing this in the classroom is a way for students to really make sense, and to know that although you're a business major, you do need to know something about philosophy and English and world views, because when you work with someone else, then you kind of need to know those things in order to function well. So we've had a interdisciplinary studies program for about 25 years, and initially, unfortunately, it started as kind of like a dumping hodgepodge, like you have all these credits, you need to get out. Kind of thing. But I'm thankful to say we have evolved from that, and so students are able to choose 2 or 3 concentration areas of choice. So I'll give you some. So we have a graduate who had a concentration in political science, communications, and Spanish, because she wanted to go to law school and to become bilingual. And so now she is an ADA in New Mexico. We had a student who had a concentration in funeral services and sociology, and she and her husband own a funeral home, and they specialize in cultural sensitive funerals. We've had students who have concentrations in, I had a student concentration in biology and psychology to go to school to be a sex therapist. I've also had, we have a large transfer population, so a student might transfer in 1 concentration that's pretty much already done from their transfer credits, but then they'll add something else that they want to do. We have a large number of students who go into social service fields like social work, behavioral management, and then we have a growing number of students who have concentrations in history, psychology, and either information technology or some other computer science field. And they've gone into things like cybersecurity. Their degree is a Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies, and then they'll have an emphasis area. So it'll say like Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies with emphasis in psychology, or if they have a minor, where we encourage students to at least have 1 minor, which is one of those that'll have a minor in psychology and an emphasis in information technology. We do have a career services offices. Honestly speaking, faculty are responsible for everything at my institution, but so faculty will do that. I'm not going to say it's their responsibility, but faculty, I think one thing that is part of historically black institutions is the strong caring and nurturing and of faculty with students. And so faculty do work together to encourage students that there are other options to be successful, to graduate. We have to meet, graduation retention rates. And so it is known around campus that we may be, an outlet for students to still meet their goal, but in a different way. There's one thing that we have done is that when we've kind of created these new courses, and I don't know how it works here, but for us, the summer kind of pays for itself, and summer is a way for a faculty to kind of try something out without it hurting them in that sense. And so that could be one way to do it. Another way is to have conversations among those disciplines with those chairs in particular, or with the dean, if those 2 areas come out of the same school, to have conversations to see how you can creatively work together to do that. One of the areas in teaching that we are evaluated on is innovation. And so to frame it in a way to show that this is an innovative way to address, and then just to link it to a curricular or university goal. So, and we have been successful in doing that, like linking it to retention or linking it to, whatever one of our institutional goals in terms of student success, and that has helped us. But yeah, we've had the same type of hurdles in terms of you need faculty buy-in, but you need administrative support to do that and to balance the two. It really, honestly, it varies from department to department and school to school, but it is possible. Thank you.